Have you ever wondered why the exact same players keep crushing six-max tournaments week after week after week, while you struggle to even make the minimum money playing the exact same format, with the exact same buy-ins, at the exact same stakes against the exact same player pool in the exact same poker rooms at the exact same time of day with the exact same tournament structures? Here is a number that should genuinely disturb you and keep you up at night thinking about how much money you have been leaving on the table after session, without even realizing that anything is wrong with your fundamental approach to this specific tournament format that has become absolutely dominant in online poker today and is rapidly taking over live poker rooms around the world as well. 90% of poker players approach six-max tournaments with a fundamentally broken strategy, and they do not even realize anything is wrong, because nobody in the poker education industry has ever taken the time to explain the critical differences to them in a way they can actually understand and apply consistently at the tables when it matters most for their results and their bankroll growth over the long term of their poker careers. They take their full ring mindset that they developed over years of playing nine-handed tables, and they try to squeeze it into a format that punishes passive, predictable play with surgical precision and absolutely zero mercy for players who refuse to adapt their approach to the unique dynamics of shorter-handed tournament play that requires completely different strategic thinking at every single position around the table, from the first hand of the tournament all the way through to the final table, where most of the prize money is concentrated waiting for aggressive players who know how to take it. And every single orbit of every single tournament, that broken approach is silently and invisibly bleeding chips from their stack directly into the pockets of players who understand what I am about to teach you in this video today, that will transform your results in this format permanently and add significant money to your bankroll over the course of your poker career if you implement it correctly and consistently at the tables. The mathematics of six-max tournaments create a completely different game than the nine-handed formats that most players originally learned on when they were starting out in poker many years ago, before six-max became the dominant tournament format online and in many live poker rooms around the world today. In a full ring game, the blinds hit you once every 9 hands, which gives you plenty of time to wait patiently for premium holdings and play a tight, disciplined style without your stack eroding too quickly from the mandatory blind payments every single orbit around the table as you wait for profitable spots to enter pots and accumulate chips from weaker opponents. In six-max, those same blinds hit you once every 6 hands, instead of every 9 hands, which represents a 50% increase in mandatory chip investment per orbit around the table that adds up to catastrophic stack erosion for players who do not adjust their ranges accordingly. But here is what nobody in the poker education industry tells you openly, because it would hurt their expensive course sales and their bottom line that depends on keeping you confused and coming back for more information. The adjustment required to beat six-max tournaments consistently at any stake level you choose to play is not simply playing a few more hands than you normally would at a 9-handed table like most generic poker advice suggests. That surface-level advice that you hear repeated everywhere across YouTube and training sites has destroyed more tournament hopes and bankrolls than bad beats ever could, because it is dangerously incomplete and leads players directly into post-flop disasters they cannot navigate successfully without a systematic framework for decision-making on every street of every hand they play throughout the entire tournament. The real adjustment that consistently winning players make to dominate six-max tournaments exists at a much deeper level, involving position dynamics and blind defense frequencies and aggression timing and stack zone awareness and board texture mapping and a complete rewiring of how you think about stack preservation versus stack accumulation throughout every stage of the tournament. Research from GTO Wizard, analyzing millions of tournament hands across all major online platforms including PokerStars and GG Poker and Party Poker and 888 Poker and WPT Global, found something that should permanently change how you approach this format going forward for the rest of your poker career, regardless of what stakes you are currently playing at today or what stakes you aspire to play at in the future as your bankroll and skills develop. Players who applied their standard full ring strategies directly to six-max formats without making any meaningful adjustments to their opening ranges or their post-flop play or their aggression frequencies showed a negative ROI of 12% on average across large sample sizes of thousands of tournaments, played over extended periods of time spanning multiple years of dedicated play at the tables. But players who implemented proper six-max specific adjustments to their pre-flop ranges and post-flop strategies and aggression frequencies and stack zone awareness and board texture mapping showed positive ROI of 23% playing the exact same tournaments against the exact same player pools at the exact same stakes with the exact same variance affecting both groups equally over those same extended time periods of play. That is a 35% swing in profitability, based purely on strategic approach, with zero difference in the actual cards being dealt to either group of players throughout those massive sample sizes that eliminate variance as a factor in the results. Let me start with the fundamental error that destroys most 6-max tournament players before they even get properly started in any given session at the tables. They play far too tight from early position because they are still unconsciously thinking in full ring terms that simply no longer apply to this shorter-handed format, where aggression is consistently rewarded with chips flowing from passive players to aggressive players every single orbit around the table. In a 9-handed full ring game under the gun means you have 8 players left to act behind you with completely unknown holdings who could wake up with any 2 cards, including premium pairs that dominate your entire range. The probability of running into a premium hand somewhere in those 8 players behind you is mathematically significant. So playing tight ranges from early position makes perfect logical sense in that 9-handed context where patience is rewarded with less blind pressure per orbit around the table, and more opportunities to wait for genuinely premium holdings before committing chips to the pot. But in 6-max, your earliest position is the low jack with only 5 players remaining behind you to act rather than 8, which changes absolutely everything about the mathematics of profitable opening ranges from every position at the table in ways that most players never study or understand, because nobody has explained it to them properly. The probability distribution changes completely and dramatically in your favor, which means your ranges should expand accordingly to take advantage of this mathematical reality that most players completely ignore. According to detailed data analysis from poker coaching with 2-time World Poker Tour champion Jonathan Little, the mathematically correct opening range from low jack in a 6-max tournament should be approximately 22% of all hands you are dealt throughout the session. But the average recreational player who has not studied this format specifically opens only 14% from this exact position because they are still thinking in full ring terms that no longer apply. That 8% difference represents pure money left on the table every single session. The button position in 6-max becomes an absolute weapon of mass chip accumulation when played correctly. Profitable 6-max tournament players are opening 45 to 50% of all hands from the button when the action folds to them. Recreational players average only 32%, leaving massive value on the table every single orbit. This systematic approach is exactly what the Mind of a Grinder ebooks teach. For just $5, you can test 2 complete premium ebooks from Series 2. GTO for Humans teaches game theory without a solver. The pre-flop blueprint gives you exact ranges for every position. The moment you purchase, you immediately receive an automatic email containing your exclusive discount coupon for Collection 2. If you upgrade, your $5 gets credited toward the full collection automatically. Zero risk. Link in the pinned comment below. Welcome back. But opening wider pre-flop ranges is only half of the equation that you need to master to become consistently profitable in 6-max tournaments over large sample sizes that smooth out the variance and reveal your true edge against the player pool. The other critical half involves understanding exactly how to play these wider opening ranges profitably on the flop, turn, and river without bleeding chips back to observant opponents who recognize what you are doing and adjust their strategies accordingly to exploit your predictable patterns at the tables. This is precisely where the 90% of players who approach this format incorrectly fail absolutely catastrophically and give back all the preflop equity they generated with their wider ranges because they have no systematic framework for navigating the marginal post-flop spots that wider opening ranges inevitably create when you actually connect with boards in different ways throughout the tournament. The solution to this extremely common and expensive problem that costs most players thousands of dollars over their poker careers is what I call board texture mapping, and it will completely transform your post-flop decision-making, starting from your very next session at the tables tonight. Before you even look at your specific hole cards on any given flop, you should be automatically categorizing that board into one of 3 distinct types based on how it mathematically interacts with pre-flop ranges in ways that determine who has the advantage and how frequently each player should be betting or checking or raising on that specific texture. Type 1 is boards that heavily favor the pre-flop raiser, like Ace-King-7 Rainbow or Queen-Jack-3, with no flush draw possibilities where you can bet frequently with small sizing around 33% pot, regardless of your specific holding, because you are leveraging your overall range advantage, not your specific hand strength against opponents who called your raise preflop. Type 2 is boards that favor the preflop caller, like 7-6-5 with 2 suited cards, or 8-7-4 with multiple draw possibilities where you should check more often, even with strong made hands like over pairs, because the board connects better with the calling range. Type 3 is neutral boards, where you need to be more selective about which hands you continue betting with based on the specific texture. Alright, now let me teach you something that almost no poker content online covers adequately, but that elite 6 max tournament players obsess over and study constantly throughout their entire professional careers, because it is absolutely essential for consistent profitability at any stake level you choose to play, from micro stakes all the way up to high roller events with massive buy-ins that attract the best players in the world. I call this concept stack zone strategy, and it is absolutely the key to navigating the middle stages of tournaments where most players slowly bleed out their chips without ever understanding why their stack keeps shrinking, despite playing what feels like fundamentally solid ABC poker to them every single hand they play at the table. In 6 max tournaments, your stack size relative to the current blind level creates 3 distinct strategic zones that require completely different approaches and different hand selection criteria and different aggression frequencies and different 3-betting ranges for each zone that you find yourself in throughout the various stages of the tournament as blinds increase and stacks get shorter relative to those blinds every level. Zone 1 is what I call the comfort zone, where you have 40 or more big blinds in your stack and complete strategic flexibility available to you at all times. Zone 2 is what I call the leverage zone, between 25 and 40 big blinds, where you need to shift toward maximum pre-flop pressure through raises and 3-bets, because you cannot afford to see flops and play post-flop poker as freely with those stack depths. GTO Wizard research shows that players who increase their 3-betting frequency by 30% in this zone show dramatically better tournament results than players who maintain static frequencies. Zone 3 is the push-fold zone below 15 big blinds, where post-flop poker largely disappears and decisions become binary. Push or fold. Most players make critical errors here by pushing too tight from early positions because it feels safer. ICM calculators show that with 12 big blinds under the gun, you should actually be pushing approximately 20% of all hands, not the 10% most recreational players use. That additional 10% represents entire tournaments you are losing by playing too tight at exactly the wrong time when you desperately need chips. Here is where 6 max tournaments get really strategically interesting, and where I see even experienced players who have been playing for years and should definitely know better making catastrophic strategic errors that completely destroy their tournament equity over large sample sizes of thousands of tournaments played across their entire careers at the tables. The bubble dynamics in 6 max are fundamentally and dramatically different from full ring bubbles, because the shorter table with only 6 players means that big stacks can apply relentless pressure far more frequently throughout every single orbit at the table, compared to 9-handed play where the action moves slower, and pressure opportunities are significantly less frequent for aggressive players who want to accumulate chips from scared opponents trying to ladder into the money. In a 9-handed tournament approaching the money bubble, a big stack might get opportunities to act as the aggressor in maybe 2 or 3 spots per orbit before the bubble finally bursts, and everyone remaining locks up a minimum cash for making the money in that particular tournament. In 6 max, that same big stack gets to apply maximum pressure on scared medium stacks every single orbit, and sometimes multiple times per orbit, depending on how the positions line up, which creates constant stress and difficult decisions for players who do not understand how to navigate this unique dynamic successfully without bleeding chips unnecessarily to more aggressive opponents who understand the mathematics of the situation. This dynamic creates what I call compression effects, where medium stacks get squeezed absolutely relentlessly because they find themselves trapped in an impossible strategic position with no good options available to them at any point during the bubble period of the tournament. They are simultaneously too big to profitably shove with marginal holdings because they still have fold equity worth preserving for better spots, but they are also too small to comfortably call raises and play post-flop without committing most of their stack and risking elimination right before the money bubble bursts, and they would have locked up a guaranteed cash for making the money. If you find yourself with 20 to 30 big blinds near the bubble, You need to make a conscious decision immediately. Hunt for spots aggressively or accept being ground down. The elite professional level play in this bubble compression situation is what I call selective aggression, targeting specific stack sizes at your table rather than playing the same strategy against every opponent regardless of their chip count relative to the blinds and their likely psychological state based on how close they are to making the money and securing a cash in that particular tournament. You want to specifically identify and target stacks that are slightly smaller than yours in the 15 to 25 big blind range at your table, because these players are trapped in what tournament professionals call ICM prison, and they simply cannot fight back effectively against your aggression without risking tournament elimination right before the money bubble bursts, and they would lock up a guaranteed cash that they desperately want to secure. They are too short to profitably call your raises without genuine premium hands, but they psychologically feel too deep to comfortably push their entire stack without holdings that justify the significant risk of elimination right before the money. So they fold way too often to your aggression. When you open raise or 3-bet specifically against these trapped stack sizes, you have massive fold equity available even with relatively weak holdings, because they cannot afford to play back at you light without risking their tournament life right before they would make the money. Simultaneously, while you are aggressively attacking these trapped medium stacks, you want to completely avoid tangling with the chip leaders at your table unless you wake up with a genuine premium hand that can profitably withstand their wide calling range, because the big stacks can call your shoves and your 3-bets without risking their own tournament life, and that dynamic completely eliminates most of your fold equity against them, which makes confrontation negative expected value. In almost every spot you might consider playing against them. This is the chess match within the poker tournament that most players never even see happening around them, while they focus exclusively on their own 2-hole cards, without considering the larger strategic picture at the table, including stack sizes and ICM implications, and psychological states of their opponents, based on their proximity to making the money in that specific tournament. Now let me share with you the most advanced concept for 6-max tournament dominance that I personally teach to serious students who want to take their game to the professional level and maximize their results in this format that dominates online tournament poker today and is increasingly popular in live poker rooms as well. I call this concept frequency manipulation, and it is exactly how elite players print chips against thinking observant opponents who are actually paying attention to patterns at the table throughout the session, rather than just mindlessly playing their own cards in isolation without considering how their previous actions affect their opponent's perceptions and adjustments. In 6-max specifically, the table is small enough that any observant opponent will begin noticing your patterns within a single session if they are paying any attention at all to how you play different positions and situations throughout the tournament. If you 3-bet the same player 3 times within 2 orbits, they are absolutely going to adjust their strategy against you, whether they do so consciously through deliberate analysis or unconsciously through automatic pattern recognition that happens naturally in the human brain when exposed to repeated stimuli. If you continuation bet every single flop without exceptions regardless of board texture, your observant opponents will start floating and raising at significantly higher frequencies to exploit your predictable behavior and steal pots from you post-flop. This pattern recognition that observant opponents naturally develop over the course of a session creates a massive opportunity for the strategically aware player who understands what is actually happening at the table on a deeper level than most recreational players will ever achieve. You can deliberately establish certain predictable patterns in the early stages of a tournament by playing tighter and more straightforwardly than optimal, and then systematically deviate from those established patterns at strategically optimal moments in the middle stages to maximize your exploitation of opponents who are still playing against your old tight patterns from earlier in the session, while you are now executing a completely different loose aggressive strategy designed to accumulate chips from their outdated reads on your playing style. Now let me give you the final critical piece of the 6-max tournament mastery puzzle that ties everything we have discussed together into one cohesive winning approach that you can implement starting from your very next session at the tables tonight. What happens when you actually reach the final table, and how should your strategy shift to maximize your expected payout and give yourself the best possible chance at claiming that first place money that represents the majority of the prize pool in every single tournament you play throughout your entire poker career? regardless of what stakes you are playing at currently. Because here is the mathematical reality that most players do not fully appreciate, even though it should be completely obvious when you think about it logically, for even a few minutes. In a 6-max tournament, the final table is the tournament in terms of actual payout equity and real money earned over your career. The prize pool jump from 6th place to 1st place typically represents 3 to 4 times the payout difference, which means the vast majority of the money you will ever win in 6-max tournaments over your entire career comes directly from outperforming at final tables specifically, rather than just min-cashing repeatedly and collecting small payouts that barely cover your buy-ins over time. Yet despite this massive concentration of prize money at the very top of the payout structure, most players arrive at final tables in pure survival mode, rather than chip accumulation mode, and this fundamental mindset error costs them literally thousands of dollars in expected value over their tournament careers. GTO Wizard Research analyzed final table play across thousands of 6-max tournaments and found that the single most profitable strategic adjustment is actually significantly increasing your aggression level once you reach the final 6 players, rather than tightening up like most recreational players do out of fear. If you are serious about mastering 6-max tournaments, the Mind of a Grinder Collection 2 provides complete tactical systems for every situation. 10 ebooks plus 5 premium bonuses. Remember, the $5 sample pack lets you verify quality first with 2 complete ebooks, plus an automatic discount coupon emailed immediately for Collection 2. Your $5 gets credited if you upgrade. Link in the pinned comment below. Subscribe now and share this video. 90% play it wrong. Now you know how to be in the 10% that profits. See you at the final table.